all successful things are created twice. First the mental creation, then the physical creation. When you write something down, it gives you a chance, not just to conceptualize, but to clear your thoughts. A lot of people do not succeed in their first venture, and yet they need people to back them. So who would typically back such a person? It's your family, it's your own savings. In fact, it is yourself, family, friends. Businesses should be there to solve problems, social problems, human problems, society problems, right? So it's important that this business, there's a reason why it wants to exist. There's a need it's trying to fill. Integrity is what is weight in gold. People become what they are attracted to or what they admire. Entrepreneurs tend to emphasize the importance of money. Money is important, but it's not nearly as important as knowing that trade well, what you're going to do, which will attract the money. A lot of people are looking for who can help them. The way to get help is to give help. So for the entrepreneur, try and invest in yourself. If you invest in yourself, others will invest in you. You can take that to the bank.
In yourself.
Yes.
You invest in yourself.
Others will invest in you.
Will invest in you.
Yes.
So guys, it's Benzik once again, and I'm here with a very powerful guest beside me here. His name is Mr. Okechukwu Enelamah. He's a very powerful guest, and on this video you're going to learn, if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for investment funds for your business, this is the video you need for you, and generally on the basics of you building your own business and growing your business to becoming successful. So this is the interview you need for it. So but before we get into it, I'm going to just read a brief of his profile. Mr. Okechukwu Enelamah is the chairman of African Capital Alliance. With 5 funds under management, ACA is a leading independent investment management firm investing in Africa. ACA invests principally in Nigeria and countries in the Gulf of Guinea. Funds under management include Capital Alliance Private Equity 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Capital Alliance Private Investment Company LP. Mr. Enelamah served as Federal Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment in Nigeria from 2015 to May 2019. Mr. Enelamah's previous equity experience was gained from Jakpa Management LP and South Africa Capital Growth Fund in New York and Johannesburg, respectively. Prior to his career in private equity, Mr. Enelamah worked for Arthur Andersen in Nigeria and London, and Goldman Sachs in New York and London. After first qualifying as a medical doctor, he qualified as a chartered accountant in Nigeria. He has an MBA from Harvard Business School and is a chartered financial analyst. Prior to his appointment to government, Mr. Enelamah served on the boards of a number of companies, including Cornerstone Insurance PLC and UAC of Nigeria PLC. He also chaired the boards of Flavors Food Limited and Landmark Property Development Company. In the non-profit making sector, Mr. Enelamah served as the chairman of the board of AIMP Network. He also sat on the boards of Africa Leadership Initiative West Africa, Emerging Markets Private Equity Association, and Africa Venture Capital Association, among others. Mr. Enelamah is married to Funola and they have 5 children. He's an ordained pastor in the Redeemed Christian Church of God. So it's your first time of coming to the channel, do well to hit the subscribe button, share this video with 1 or 2 persons that you know this video is going to be effective for, and also don't forget to like this video and hit the post notification so that each time I upload a new video, you're one of the first to get notified. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Okechukwu Enelamah. So,
thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for giving me this special opportunity to interview you here. It's a privilege. So to start with, can you tell us a little bit about you and how you ventured into private equity?
Well, you've read a fairly extensive bio, so I'll make it short. I started life, I trained as a medical doctor many years ago, qualified in 1985 from University of Nigeria in Nsukka. Well, University of Nigeria, because I was actually in Enugu campus, although I started from Nsukka. And, but had a short stint in medicine. I then decided to pursue a career in business and finance. I was fortunate to get into an international firm that was founded by Americans called Arthur Andersen. Arthur Andersen is what is now called KPMG Professional Services in Nigeria, but back then it was Arthur Andersen in Nigeria and globally. And I trained with them as an accountant, as you've said. So it was from that training that really opened my eyes to the world of finance, and it's an exciting world out there. I decided to then do an MBA, and that MBA was how I really launched my finance career, first in New York, then in South Africa. And then I started African Capital Alliance, which started from Nigeria, but now is an African firm. Really.
Excellent. A little bit of our background growing up and how has it been for you?
So, my background, I grew up as the son of a clergyman. My father was a reverend minister, Reverend Fred Enelamah. He's not living with us now, but my mom is still alive. She's turning 85 this year. And, I grew up in a large family. I think I had 9 siblings. You know John Enelamah, he's my brother, and you may have met some of my other siblings as well. But I grew up in a happy family. Obviously, the foundation was God, the God foundation in terms of Christian values, and in terms of fearing God. That was something I was taught, and I believe is the way to go.
Okay. How did they help to bring you up as an entrepreneur and what you're doing today?
So I think about an entrepreneur, first of all, there's something called the entrepreneurial spirit. Okay. It's an attitude, right? It's the way you look at things. And I'll give you a couple of, should I say, things to illustrate the entrepreneurial spirit. Okay. One is, you said I did my MBA at Harvard Business School. The way one of their most eminent professors defines entrepreneurship or an entrepreneur is somebody who pursues an idea or a goal regardless of the resources he currently controls. In other words, there's a wide gap between where the person is going and where he is. But that spirit keeps him going. He's able to bridge that gap and get to the destination. And that's why you can apply the entrepreneurial spirit to any vision. Whether it's a family, whether it's a business, whether it's a church, or whether it's an enterprise. So that's one. The second thing to say about entrepreneurial spirit is really, and this may be a bit counterintuitive, it's about stewardship. It's about stewarding resources. How do you use what you have and steward things in a way, or manage things in a way that you're able to, give a good account of it? Because most entrepreneurs eventually need others to work with them to get the results. And stewardship becomes, like I said, in a way that most people don't think about, probably one of the most important qualities for being a good entrepreneur. Can I trust you with something? If you permit me to use a biblical example, you've had the parable of the unjust steward or the shrewd manager, and this was somebody who was giving something that belonged to somebody else. And the way he used it was such that the master decided to fire him. But then he found clever ways, to take care of himself. But the Lord Jesus Christ asked a question. They said, if you have not taken care of what belongs to other people, what makes you think you can take care of yours when it's given to you? It's a profound question.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, now what role did Harvard Business School did in your life to help you to become what you're doing today?
So Harvard Business School is obviously a very eminent school, right? And it's known for business, but it's also known for entrepreneurship, since you are interested in entrepreneurship. And what it does is to, train you to think, in a particular way. So it exposes you to the core, let me call it, subjects that people practice in general management. So it's not just finance, but marketing, operations, leadership. But the thing is that Harvard Business School is also reputed for entrepreneurship. Not exclusively so. So you find that the courses you take there can actually prepare you to be an entrepreneur. Let me share one with you. I took a course in my second year that was called Power and Influence. It was actually a leadership course. But that course required you to think about your future, well into the future, to say, what would success look like? And what kind of impact do you want to have? And I remember I had a boss before that said visioning was dreaming with your eyes open. That's what it means to have a vision. So it's as if I dreamt with my eyes open. So I said I actually wanted to work in Africa. I wanted to do finance, for which I had given up a career in medicine. I wanted to be an owner. I didn't just want to be an employee. And nothing wrong with being an employee, but I wanted to ultimately own as well. And I wanted to create wealth for those I manage their resources. That's what I was talking about, stewardship. And in that process, create wealth for myself. And what was striking is that God actually opened the door. Even though I had opportunities to work for people, because I had done this course and he had trained me to think more entrepreneurially, I found myself, looking out there to say, isn't there something that is closer to the mark in terms of this my vision? Fortunately, there was. There's a gentleman, Thomas Barry, who was living his, very sort of a high-profile role where he was to start an investment fund for South Africa. And he asked me to come join him, in quote, partner with him, even though I was a much junior partner, to raise this money or this fund and invest it in South Africa. And that's what I actually did for the first 4 or so years coming out of Harvard Business School. I did it in New York and in South Africa. So when you talk about Zephyr Management, that's the firm, and that firm is still going. And then I was part of a firm that eventually became called BRIT in South Africa, but it was called, the fund we managed was called South Africa Capital Growth Fund.
Oh, interesting. Now, you talked about giving up your career in medicine. What informed you giving up your study for medicine to chase chartered accounting?
So medicine was an interesting place to begin my training from. I went to medical school in a sense, straight from secondary school. When I finished from Government College Omaha, which is a well-known school, Chino Achabe School, I went to University of Nigeria in Nsukka. I actually went there originally to study pharmacy. But I had applied to both pharmacy and medicine, but I was taking for pharmacy. But fortunately, even though I was taking for pharmacy, because you do a pre-med or like a 1 year sort of curriculum, if you go straight from class 5 as opposed to those that go from A levels or higher school, you spend 1 year together in a pool, and in that pool, you still have a chance, to maybe go into pharmacy proper or medicine proper. So look at it as if it was almost like an A levels thing. And it's in that 1 year that I decided that I preferred medicine. So I got into medical school because I did well in that program and was given a choice, and I chose medicine. When I got to medical school though, I realized that this was a calling. Medicine is serious. I mean, they teach you not just to care for the patients, but to understand that this thing is a calling. And so I had to ask myself, am I really called to be a medical doctor? And even though I went through the training, and thank God I did, I'm qualified, and I'm still very close to my classmates, something pulled me away from medicine towards finance. I was somewhat restless as a medical doctor, and I believe that, people do have callings and areas where they will do better than other areas. And I'm not, looking back now, they say you live life forwards, but you understand it when you look back. This thing I'm talking about happened in 1988. So I crossed over in 1988. So one of the reasons that I crossed over is I realized that if I really wanted to be a finance professional, a financier or an investor, I had my whole career, my whole life ahead of me. Instead of looking back to the 8 years I'd put into medicine, 6 years in medical school, 1 year as in internship or house job as we call it, 1 year youth service, and then I had just started working. And that turned out to be a wise decision because 35 years on, I've been in finance for 35 years now.
Wow.
And medicine was only 8.
Wow, interesting. Yes. Okay, now in a layman's understanding, can you explain to us what does a company do and what is private equity all about?
Private equity, as the name implies, means first equity. Equity is when you're investing in shares of companies, when you're buying interest or shareholding in businesses. Okay. Private, as opposed to public equity is when you're buying quoted shares, like on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Johannesburg Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange, or the New York Stock Exchange. Okay. Private equity is when you're investing in businesses that are not really quoted, are private, and usually we think of it as a partnership. So you're going in there to partner with the business, to bring it to the point where you can then maybe go and list it or you become quoted, right? At that stage, can be owned by the public because presumably it's well managed, the governance is in place, it has a good board, it has good management, and it's like a fairly mature company. So we shepherd companies to maturity. Now that's why when you think about private equity more broadly defined, it starts from venture capital or even ventures. Angel investors are investing in startups, early ideas, which is what entrepreneurship is all about. Then from there it goes into venture capital, early stage investing. Eventually it goes into growth capital, where you're buying into businesses that are existing and now growing. Then it goes into later stage investing, what we call management buyouts or leverage buyouts. But ultimately, companies end up on the stock exchange and become listed.
Wow, interesting. How important is business plan when getting investors to invest in company?
I think the most important thing, and I'll get to the business plan, is the who question. Who am I? That's why you need to invest in yourself first. Because at times it is said that people who have invested in themselves, for instance, you may be very good at something. Maybe you've worked for somebody and become an expert on computers or sort of on selling cars, or even the apprenticeship model we know here, where people train to sell spare parts or to sell other fast-moving consumer goods. That person and that training is what really that business plan should capture, right? So whether the business plan is a very lengthy document or is a short document, provided the person who is going to implement it or the team, is credible because they can actually implement that plan, that's very powerful. Now, once you have that, the importance of planning is that, like they say, all successful things are created twice. If you're a student of Stephen Covey, who wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the most, I would say, one of the best personal effectiveness books of the last century that I read, and I'm sure many people have read, He says all successful things are created twice. First, the mental creation, then the physical creation. When you write something down, it gives you a chance, not just to conceptualize, but to clear your thoughts. It also gives you an opportunity to get other people, particularly if you are going to work as a team, because you shouldn't really be doing things alone, so that you guys can capture these ideas as a single document. It's also a financing document, right? Because that's a document somebody can look at and respond to it to say, am I interested in this business? What sector is it in? Am I interested in this management team? Do I like the financials? How much capital is required? For how long? What are the benchmarks or milestones we're going to be watching out for? So that's where business plan comes in. You talked about Harvard Business School.
Yes.
They train you, of course, to prepare things like that, business plans, but not exclusively. So does ICANN, by the way. That is training to be a chartered accountant.
Okay, interesting. Now, one of the challenges most entrepreneurs have is getting investors to invest in their businesses or trying to approach investors. So what are the models or what are the ways you think an entrepreneur can be able to approach investors to be able to get investment for their business?
It's an excellent question. I would say that if you followed you asked me a question, what is private equity? And I went back to tell you it starts from new ventures, startups, ideas.
Yes.
The general principle is that when you are starting up, the first people that will invest in you are people who know you and who are invested in your success, even at their own cost. Right? So that's why they talk about family, friends, and at times they even add a third F, fools. Why they add fools? Because the money may be lost. A lot of people do not succeed in their first venture, and yet they need people to back them. So who would typically back such a person? It's your family, it's your own savings. In fact, it is yourself, family, friends, and so-called fools in quotes. Note that the fools is in quotes because it means that this person is prepared to take a punt on you, right? Because it's the first thing. Usually we ask for track record. Show me what you've done. You can have track record, by the way. But if you have done other things, that's why you find that it's good to live your life in a way that, people develop confidence in you and can trust you. They say to be or to have. It is better to be. It is better to build character first. Because people who have character, I've invested in people just because I like their character. I know what I get. I remember I have a gentleman who used to be my barber, and first I invested in him, in his barbering business, but eventually he went into other things, and I still backed him. And in fact, at this stage, I started using him to talk to young entrepreneurs because he's like them. And at times when I speak, they might say, this man that went to Harvard, maybe he's coming to talk theory. But at times it's good to bring people who know that this thing is for real. And I honestly believe that once you do that, and you show a measure of success, then the next stage are so-called angel investors. There are people who just invest in lots of early businesses, right? Maybe they put in 1 million naira, 10 million naira, 3 million naira, 5 million naira, 100 million naira, or $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, or $1 million, And they're here, even in Lagos. You have something called the Lagos Angel Network, right? And those angels are then the next stage. From there, it starts getting into venture capital businesses or venture capital firms and are in different series. There's the seed stage, which is seeding businesses, and some of them can be as early as ideas, and then they get into Series A, Series B, Series C before you get to private equity.
Wow. So private equity is the top of the ladder.
Well, not top. It's just like I told you, businesses go through just like a child. When you give birth to a child, the way the mother has to nurture the child, and at some stage, it gets to toddler stage, and maybe you can go to nursery school. From there, you can go to primary school, and others start to participate. Eventually, you can go to secondary school, university. It's like that as well. So he's saying that venture is a very delicate thing. It's first nurtured by the entrepreneur, and he said, your idea is, you protect it, and you nurture it into reality. You turn it from, the head to reality, and then people are backing you, and as the thing grows, those that are backing it will also grow with you, and you get into more and more professional, or what we call institutional investors. The further out you go, or the longer you survive to thrive.
So it's not possible to get a startup to get from venture capitalists or to get private equities to.
It is possible, but they will always ask for skin in the game, which is what are you putting in yourself. And at times that might include your family. That might even include your friends, right? But it's possible. Some people invest in ideas.
Okay. So what are some of the key metrics or KPIs that investors typically look for to invest in a business?
So again, it depends. What I would say is that people bring different at different stages, right? People bring their own level of understanding and competence in that area. I tend to invest in later stage things, but I've also backed people, like I said, in terms of ideas. I think what people are looking for is first of all, what problem, if you're dealing with very early stage, what problem are you trying to solve?
Okay.
Businesses should be there to solve problems, social problems, human problems, society problems, right? So it's important that this business, there's a reason why it wants to exist. There's a need it's trying to fill,
Yes.
right? And then the next thing is that, like, how big is that need? You know, even if you are wildly successful, you know, there are some things that even if they succeeded, it won't move the needle. But there are some ideas that if they succeed, they can really lead to a breakthrough.
Yes.
People like those sort of ideas.
Yes.
The other thing is that, like, you know, in terms of your own readiness or fit or ability to fill that need, you know, how ready are you in terms of your background, in terms of your competence, in terms of the team? I'm very big on teams. I'm very big on the who question. I believe it is first who, then what. This idea is not original. There's a gentleman called Jim Collins that wrote some of the great business books, you know, Good to Great, Great by Choice, How the Mighty Fall, Built to Last. You know, in one of his books, he says it is first who, then what. You know, the person is important. Benzik, then what he's doing. You know, and I would say those two things go hand in hand.
That's true.
Yes.
So now, but coming to you, what do you think you can list as the 3 or 5 key things that has helped you in your journey of life so far?
The things that have helped me in my journey so far, the most important is the people God has put my way. The mentors I've had, the quality of people who have counseled me, who have nurtured me, who have trained me, where I have trained. You know, the quality of where you get your training from is incredibly important.
Wow.
That's not to say that it's the only way, but I can tell you that, you know, when you have been mentored or trained by the best in anything, you know, you belong to that company.
That's true.
You know, and that's why they say, tell me who your friends are and I tell you who you are. Or those who hang out with the wise will be wise. Those who hang out with fools will be fools. You know, and this relates both to formal and informal education. So if you look at the people who, the apprenticeship model, for instance, they're very selective at times in who they get their apprenticeship from. If you get an apprenticeship from somebody who is, you know, very good at that trade, that's a gift. That's why they pay them at times. You are even prepared to pay to get that training. So rather than the person paying you, that's why you find that those apprentices, they actually don't pay. I mean, of course, when they're leaving, their master might set them up and so on. But the same thing applies to schools. Even when you're going to schools, it's good to go to, you know, the best schools you can get into. Even if your parents or guardians have to borrow. Because education is an invaluable investment. It's a priceless investment. It's a huge investment. One of the things that has helped me the most is that I've had the privilege of going to, you know, good schools. Schools that, you know, people reckon with. And they train you there. You know, right from primary school to secondary school to university to even business school and all that. And it's a gift, right? Those things are a gift. I'm not saying that, like, and the good thing is that because this is so important, there are many good schools. So it's not only one. If you talk about business school, there are probably up to 50, 100, maybe hundreds business schools around the world that are very good. In Lagos, you have Lagos Business School. It's considered a top school. You have London Business School. It's considered a top school. And in the US, they have over 30 or 50 world-class business schools.
That's true.
You know, and that's just one profession. You know, so my point is that, like, where you get your education and training from is important.
Yes.
The other thing I said before is character. Integrity is what is weight in gold. You know, so for instance, you know, I hope when people think of me, they'll think of me as a person of character, somebody you can trust. You know what I mean? I believe that's why I was asked to serve in government, for instance. I didn't lobby for it. I just got a call one day, and they said the president was constituting his cabinet, and that he wanted me to be the representative for my state, Abia State. And honestly, that was one of the reasons why I considered it and accepted, even though I was busy at the time. But I felt it was an honor that, God willing, that one ought to give to his country.
Okay, now you mentioned the importance of mentors in your life and the role
Yes.
they play. But I can hold that for entrepreneurs well by getting the right mentors.
Yes, a very important question. I think the starting point is to say, this thing I want to be an entrepreneur in, who is my role model? Who do I look up to? Who do I admire? Because people become what they're attracted to or what they admire, right? So be selective. Choose carefully who you admire. Choose very carefully. Even in the world today, you know the way Nigeria is today, some people admire people who have money. Do you admire their character? Do you know how they made their money? But if you come back to entrepreneurship or, you know, why don't you find people in that circle or that area, you know, that you admire? And then start studying them. Even the studying it at times can be remote. You can be just reading up about them. And then eventually, you know, try to find a way to get an introduction. You know, they say almost anybody in the world is 6 degrees of freedom away. In other words, by the time you go through 6 people, you can get to even the president of the United States.
That's true.
You know, and of course, God Almighty, who is the most important, you can get to him directly. That's why God has said, come unto me directly. Don't go through anybody. You know, so my point is that, like, yes, you can choose mentors by identifying role models who are good in that thing you're interested in. And then when you get a chance to meet them, you try and be respectful of their time and also be a blessing to them. Because I'll give you an example. If you look at those who mentored me, I joined Arthur Andersen. One of my mentors became the managing partner, the head of the firm, the CEO. How did he become my mentor? He had gone to Harvard Business School and I wanted to go there. I met somebody else who had gone to Harvard Business School who said to me, why don't you get your boss, your ultimate boss, Dick Kramer, that's his name, to support you, to be your reference. So I said, but he's supervising so many people. He'll tell me to go do my work. Why am I looking for somewhere else to go to? I'm getting good training here. But the man prepared me for my meeting with Dick Kramer. So after he prepared me, he told me what the kind of questions I'm likely to get, how to answer. I then asked for a meeting with him. Eventually I got the meeting, and as God will have it, he eventually asked those questions I was prepared for. When I answered them right, he used to call me Oki. My name is spelled O-K-E-Y, okay? We'll call it okay, but it's American. So he used to call me Oki. He said, okay, you've given this a lot of thought. I'm going to help you.
Wow.
And that relationship started. Wow. We eventually founded African Capital Alliance together. So it's a journey. Mentorship is a journey. It could start from, just your knowing about the person, and then you go from there.
Wow, interesting. Now, you talked about working for the government. Now, how did it happen? How did the process happen entirely? How were you located? And how did you get involved? And why did you choose to work for government?
A lot of it has to do with this point about, one, character, and two, being known in your field, being an expert at something, being good at something. Because what had happened was this was the first administration of President Buhari in 2015. The enthusiasm when he came, and everybody was very excited about the possibilities. So they started talking to people, trying to locate people, from those states where he did not have any immediate candidates of his own, right? And Abia State was one of them. So through the contacts they had, they approached two prominent people from the southeast or from, that part of the world. And both of them said, if it's Abia State, go for Okechukwu Enelamah. Because they were looking for somebody who was an expert on, the economy, or who understood the economy and who they could work with on the economy, and then they were also looking for integrity, And for me, it is quite humbling that those two things that I asked for, even though I'm sure there are many others from Abia State, as God will have it, these two people pointed to me. So they insisted that I was the person they wanted. So I had to find a way to make myself available. So that was the starting point of the journey. But I had to ask God, to help me, and God helped me.
So how has been the experience? How was the experience like working for the government? Is it something laudable or something, or deserting the entire policies? How has it been for you?
Well, it's very good exposure. It's obviously an honor to serve your country. When I went there, I was given the portfolio of industry, trade and investment, meaning I was the federal minister responsible for industry, trade and investment.
Yes.
And the passion and the burden I had was to focus on enabling environment. Let me explain that. In other words, how do you create the right environment, or what some people might call ecosystem, for people to do business?
Yes.
So that's really what industry is about. For industry, for investors, for SMEs, small, medium, and enterprises, medium scale enterprises, I began to look for ways, to modify our policies. I'm sure you may have heard of something called the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council. It was meant to create this atmosphere. And we started that journey, but it's a journey, governance is a long-term journey. You can't do it in one administration. I was there for just one administration. So for me, it was also a learning process, trying to understand how does government work, right? And why is it so difficult to get these results? And my conclusion is that you can actually change this country if you are determined and you have the passion for reform, which I had. But you need more and more people with passion for reform to go into governance and into the business, into government, right?
Yes.
So that you have a critical mass, so that working together, we can make change happen.
Interesting. Now, coming back to investment and entrepreneurship, what can you list as the common mistakes entrepreneurs make when seeking for investors or investments?
I think the first one is that entrepreneurs tend to emphasize the importance of money. Money is important, but it's not nearly as important as knowing that trade well, what you're going to do, which will attract the money. But the way the Bible puts it, it says that wisdom is a defense. In other words, wisdom is very valuable, just as money is a defense. Money is also very valuable. But it says wisdom is superior to money because wisdom gives life. In other words, what to give life to your business is not money. If you give money to somebody who is a bad entrepreneur, he will blow it. And many people, when they start, like I said, need to be prepared to make the common mistakes, errors in that trade so that you master it. Because it's by mastering it that you find that a little grows. So even the money, when you get it, then you know how to multiply it. So that's the first thing, that the wisdom required for that area, have you acquired it? In all you're getting, get wisdom. You know what? Wisdom is the principal thing. All you're getting, get understanding, which is basically talking about wisdom as well. The second thing is, who is around you, right?
Who is around you?
Yeah, who are you? Are there people around you who can add to you? Or is everybody around you taking away, or just basically not wise, right? Not bringing the kind of wisdom.
Mistake they can make.
Yeah, the mistake they can make is who they surround themselves with. Most people surround themselves either with yes men, or people who think that are too much, who think that who just keep praising them. Meanwhile, they're making all kinds of mistakes. And their attitude is related to that as well, because you will make mistakes. And I think the most important thing is to have that what I call perseverance. That willingness to persevere. Even if you make a mistake, they say a mistake is not final. You fail forward, right? Because you will inevitably make mistakes. No entrepreneur, no matter how great, goes in there and does not suffer so much. That's why you need to have what we call a margin of safety. In other words, when you make mistakes, can you gather yourself and survive it? You know what I mean? And it's important that one has that, because at times some entrepreneurs are also wildly and over optimistic. It's good to be optimistic, it's good to be positive, but not to the point where when you then get a surprise, in quotes, the thing doesn't go the way you expected. You don't bounce back, you're like finished. It's almost like, but you should be able to bounce back, yes.
Okay, what qualities do investors look for in a business?
So,
before investing?
Like I said, for a business, depending on the stage, let me deal with the stage we invest in, because that might be something that be helpful. Since I've talked a lot about entrepreneurs. When you're dealing with existing business or businesses that are growing, what you're looking for is a track record. In other words, show me what you've done, right? And on the basis of that, show me what you're planning to do.
Show
right?
what you've done and what you're planning to do.
Yes, so that most people come to you with a very rosy idea of the future. But I also want to know, how much of this future have you demonstrated in your past? It doesn't have to be the same thing, but at least let me see the track record. I like to use biblical examples. If you look at the story of David, some people look at David and say, how can you go and fight Goliath? And they're right. It was a tall order. But David said, I've killed the bear, I've killed the lion. That already demonstrated courage and a warrior of sorts, right? Of course, Goliath was a different proposition. But God willing, said the same God that I worked with to kill you, I can work with the same God. So somebody is saying, look at God, don't look at me. So my point is that, like, if you show me how you have tackled difficult issues before, I can then anticipate how you will tackle the challenges that are coming. So that track record is important. And at times it helps when people can speak for you, not just yourself, right? It would be nice if I wanted to ask about Ndubisi or Benzik, and I go to Mr. A, maybe Bumi Elisha, and Bumi Elisha shows you can't go wrong with this person. Even this interview, you know how we got into it.
Yes.
You were recommended.
Yes.
And somebody said to me, this is a young man that you ought to listen to and interview with. And I said, okay, I'll find the time. And here we are today, Benzik.
That's true.
Yes.
That's very interesting. Now, working with governments and working in the private sector, what are the differences that you can put together? Or what are the lessons you've learned in both ways, and which can you maybe put above the other?
Both are necessary. Let me start from the end. You need a handshake. You need cooperation between government and the private sector for the country to succeed, for businesses to succeed, for entrepreneurs to succeed, for SMEs to succeed. And one of the biggest issues we're dealing with is this poor cooperation, or even lack of cooperation, or even distrust or suspicion. People in private sector suspect government as, being corrupt, or not even suspect, they believe government is corrupt, maybe rightly so, and that they are not there in the interest of the common man or the private sector. The government on the other side believes that a lot of people who are looking for business profit cut corners and do not always follow the rules. So the first thing I learned is, I like when you at one side you look at it from the other person's point of view, because that's how you get progress. So when I went to government, I think the most important thing I brought to it was, having been in the private sector for several years, decades, I was able to bring to the government what I call the private sector perspective. What is it that businesses are looking for? What are investors looking for? And they found it valuable. They actually listened to me. It's just like I said, governance is a long-term thing, right? I was allowed to come up with new policies, for SME, industrial zones, and so on and so forth. So the important thing is that I went there to bring my experience from the private sector and to learn what it takes to put policies in place, that will help the country and the economy and people to do business. Now, so when you look at it from that point of view, I believe that public service, as you say, government is public service.
Yes.
And as a public servant, you need to have servant leadership. You are there to serve the public. The problem arises when people go there and they want to be lords. Again, I use a biblical example. When some of Jesus' disciples said, who is the greatest? I say, whoever be the servant amongst you, he is the greatest. We call it servant leadership. I believe that, like, if you are going to be in government, you know, it helps if you are going there to serve rather than to look after yourself, right? If you're a private business, of course, you should make profit, but you should do it in a way that you are part of a bigger system. You know, it's good to cooperate with others, because one of the things you learn, again, I go back to Harvard Business School, one of the most prominent professors from there, Professor Michael Porter, talked about industry, and he said the best thing about competition is when people who are in the same industry collaborate first to build an attractive industry before they compete for how much of the share of the industry I get. Because if the industry is a bad industry, we all suffer. All the players just make losses.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So the same way, those of us that are in Nigeria, if you consider Nigeria a particular domain, we should cooperate first to make Nigeria attractive.
That's true.
To make it a place where people make money, where people do well, before we get into, okay, how do I make sure my business is succeeding better than your own?
Now,
I don't know if that makes sense.
Was it frustrating working for the government than the private sector?
Well, the government, when you work for the government, obviously it's an opportunity to serve, like I said. It can be frustrating from the point of view of change and how
When
much
it comes to bringing change.
Yeah, and how quickly you can bring it. But but if you approach it with wisdom, the first thing you understand is that you have to seek first to understand. What happens is a lot of people go into government and assume they know it all. Meanwhile, they've never done it before. Right? You have to understand first how government works. You also have to understand what it takes to make change happen. Change is negotiated. Change is lobbied. Change is, is something you give something for and you get something in return. So I had to learn to work with my colleagues. I had to learn to work with the president. I had to learn to work with his chief of staff, through whom, policies are gathered for him to then review, right? I had to learn to work with my colleagues in the cabinet. I had to learn to manage my ministry. I had a permanent secretary. I had directors of the different departments of the ministry. And all these people were important to me. If I went there to lord it over them, you find that they can frustrate you. But if I go there and I cooperate with them, they can help you to succeed. So humility is a defense.
So what if cooperating with them, have you come encounter where we're trying to cooperate to do the right thing, but it was resisted? The right thing?
Oh yes, it happens.
Yes.
It happens.
You
It happens.
trying to make sure that you want to implement something that is right, but you are being resisted by
No, it's a very important, it's an excellent question. The first thing is, like I said, make sure that you have people on your side. How do you get people on your side? Not everybody that wants to do the wrong thing. And remember that every time that somebody's trying to do the wrong thing, it's probably out of self-interest. He's getting something.
Yes.
He's not sharing with everybody. So what you do is first of all, when I got into my ministry and into government, I signaled what I stood for. They knew what was important to me and to my sort of why I was there. Now, why that is important is that if you do that well enough, a lot of people, because you are in a fairly significant position and if they fight you, they are likely to lose.
Yes.
They won't fight you in the areas that are most important to you. They might be doing something on the sidelines. So the first thing is to get your priorities right. So you're not fighting too many battles. Okay. So if I start going everywhere trying to find out everything people are doing wrong, say I'll solve it on one day, that's bad leadership. Leadership is prioritization. You prioritize the 2 or 3 things that are very important to you. And you tell guys, if you cross me in this area, I'll crush you. This is important to me. So in my own case, it was important to me to make it easy for people to do business with government. It was important to me that I tried to build industrial infrastructure so that industry can thrive, and a number of other things. But some of them I still face frustration. For instance, in trying to build the industrial zones and industrial infrastructure, the agencies or the what we call parastatals that were responsible, for supervising the industry felt it would take away their power, and they tried to frustrate it, and it was a running battle. Okay. Right? So you will get that. So you just pick your fights, and of course we took on the fight.
And the one you cannot fight, you just let it go.
No, well, like I said, you get your priorities right. If you get your priorities right, the ones you let be is, in other words, I can't do everything at once. So I focus my energies in those things that are most important to me and to my administration and to the government I'm serving, right? And I try and get those done. You know what I mean? Bearing in mind there might be other things which I'm not getting done now. Okay. So that's what I did, and I think that's what I advise people to do. And this is a principle not just for government, it applies to life as well.
Now, coming to business and success in general, what do you think? What do you can list like 5 blueprints that you can say these are the blueprint that if anyone possesses can come out, so it's bound to come out successful in this part of the world?
Well, my first one is godliness. And I know people will say godliness, what will you say, religion? But the reason I say so is that, like, if you truly fear God, right, and you develop character as a result, people will notice and they will help you. You know, the problem we have in this country is that, like, we just don't have enough people who truly fear God. I'm not talking about going to church, and I include all of us in it. You know what I mean? When the man is not there, and they ask this person, I say this person fears God. You know what I mean? You know, people, some of the characters in the Bible, remember there were exceptions. Everybody wasn't like that. All this Joseph you hear, Daniel, you know, and so on. These were people who feared God. So I would say, you know, it's important. For me, you know, I think that is the secret of success. That's number one. Number two is, you know, get training. Get training. Training, and I'm using training broadly to mean education, to mean investing in yourself, to mean just, if you look at what has helped me the most, if you ask anybody, that's why you read my CV, right? Those things open doors. When people look at where you've been trained, they respect that. So there's nothing like making an investment in yourself. I'm not saying it's only formal education, because I know that this video, other people listen to it. Some people get training from great players in the trade they're in. You know what I mean? But the quality of training is incredibly important, right? And it's good to get it early, right? So that's number two. Number three is people. Just try and build relationships, networks, you know, in a way that is win-win. I'm not talking about, a lot of people are looking for who can help them. The way to get help is to give help. What do I mean by that? Most people, even the so-called important people you know, I told you about the Kramer who was my mentor, but eventually my relation with him became that of, father and son, and eventually partners, equal partners even, because the business we invested in was my idea, and it was my trade that I had trained, that I had gotten this training in. So he helped to bring the contacts, he helped to bring some of the capital. In fact, most of the capital, I brought very little, but I brought the trade. So I had trained myself. So it's that training that was my value add, or what you might call what I brought to the party. You know what I mean? So when you bring that, you find that, like, you will always be able to get both partners or mentors or partner or people you can do business with, both those who are senior to you and those that are maybe people who are looking up to you as well. And then the other one I'll talk about is, remember I've talked about three and I can go through them again if you want. Number 4 is giving. Let me tell you what I mean by giving. Most people don't actually understand the principle or the laws of sowing and reaping. It's a natural law and it's a spiritual law, right? It's a spiritual law. People reap what they sow. If I want to get help, let me give help. You may not be the person I help that will help me back, but God's universal laws are at work. So you find that, like, by giving to people, by helping people who need your help, right, you get help. Let me tell you a true story to illustrate this point. Many years ago, I have a younger brother. After I'd gone to business school, he wanted to do the same part. He even joined Arthur Andersen. Then he went into banking. Then he wanted to go to business school. He got into London Business School. Now, he was looking for a way to pay the fees, because fees was in pound sterling, when you're in Nigeria. At the time, I was trying to build a house, because I was now working in a golden estate. Myself and my wife, we thought, we've been renting. Wouldn't it be nice even if we built a small place of our own? So, of course, I was trying to build a house. You can imagine how much it takes to build a house. I felt, let me start looking for. So when my brother was going to go to school, I felt, you've been banking. If you don't have the money, I borrowed when I went. You go and borrow money and go while I look for money for my house. But I remember I had a dream, and I got this strong urge to help him. That by helping him, I get help. So eventually, I provided a guarantee, because I could afford to provide a guarantee, through which he got money from one of the banks there. The bank needed somebody who had assets enough to provide a guarantee. I provided a guarantee, and they gave him the money needed to go to school. Do you know that once I did that, this my mentor eventually also gave me a loan. In fact, I asked him for a guarantee, because that was what I thought I should do. I asked him for a guarantee, but he gave me a loan to build my house, and I repaid him. In other words, by investing here, I was getting from there. And I believe that, like, a lot of that happens just that we're not paying attention. So I'll say giving is important. Even when you're trying to do your own thing, who are you helping? Some entrepreneurs want to go from this level to there, but remember the guys who are there. That's why I believe a lot in mentoring and in giving back. When you say I pastor, it's not because I'm not a full-time pastor, as you can tell. I work in the office, I'm a professional. But that opportunity to share my own experience, to teach the word of God, to show people the path to godliness, is an opportunity I cannot give up, because it's an opportunity to give.
So when you say giving, where do it be specified? Does it necessarily mean money?
No, it can be, it's service. In other words, it's not just give me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Whether it's some people want to listen to great preachers.
Yes.
Teach other people too. Some people want to get money, give other people money too. Some people want to be mentored. Who are you mentoring? So it's the principle of giving. That is, in other words, sacrifice. You are giving, and of course, you reap more than you sow.
Okay. Right.
Let me close it with one more great quotation on this from one of the devotional writers that I like a lot. He says, "We do not reap when we sow. We do not reap when we sow. We may not reap where we sow, but we always reap what we sow. Therefore, sow what you need."
Wow. Interesting.
We do not reap when we sow. We may not reap where we sow, but we always reap what we sow. Therefore, sow what you need. A lot of people think if you need money, then minus the money you have, don't give anybody. If you need love, then just be harassing people to say, "Why are you not loving me?" If you need love, love them. They will love you back. Give love, yeah. So it's a very sound principle. It's just that it's a contrarian principle. It works contrary to common sense or logic, but it's very powerful. The same way a farmer goes to the farm with beans when he wants to reap beans, or with yam when he wants to reap yam. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the way life is.
That's the fourth one. You have a fifth one.
Okay, fifth one in terms of the principle for success, I would say the final one is probably take a long-term view, patience. In other words, life is a marathon, right? It's not a 100-meter dash. Do not be discouraged how you start. It doesn't matter whether you start very well or not. The important thing is have staying power. Staying power is key. And I believe in what I call the power of compound interest. I like things that compound over time. Let time work for you. Make time your friend. How do you make time your friend? Make sure that every day what you're doing, you're adding value. It's positive.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Whether it's even businesses, they grow in the process of time. Relationships grow in the process of time. Things succeed in the process of time. So the most important thing is, to make sure time is working for you. And I link principle 1 with principle 5 because I tell people that when God is on your side, time is your friend.
Interesting.
When God is not on your side, frankly, in the process of time, even if you seem like you're doing well, things can go all right, things can go negative against you. And this is not superstition. This is just a principle that God rules in the affairs of men.
Interesting. Now, how do you compare the ease of doing business in Nigeria of then?
Well, most people you ask will tell you things were easier then. But the Bible's view on this. He said, do not say that in the good old days, that's not wise. You know why he says that? That's sunk cost. The past is behind us. The important thing is, what are you doing with today? And remember that you can be propelled by adversity. The truth is that if you take these challenges we're facing now, it's going to produce people who are more rugged, right? People who can get results, right? So these principles we've talked about, let them work for you today. They worked then, they work now, they'll work tomorrow, right? And it's important, right? As even if things were easier then, to buckle up and be part of the solution now. You know what I mean? I do agree with those, by the way, who choose to go and get training abroad or to go and get some experience abroad. Yes. So my view is not that everybody must be here. Yes. So even the Jakpa syndrome thing, I'm not entirely against it. I just think for each individual, you know what I mean? Prayerfully sort out where you belong. Because if you're supposed to be here, you go there. You have just left your zone. You know what I mean? So don't follow other people to live. I'll tell you another story as we begin to conclude. I have a friend. I trained as a medical doctor. You asked me about this earlier. My friend, who was my classmate, went to secondary school together, went to university together. The brothers were living in America. So they invited him to come over. When I was going to America, I was really worried. I felt, here, my friend is going to America to train as a doctor. I didn't have anybody to call me from there. I didn't even want to go as such because I didn't want to be a doctor. I don't get sucked into medicine. But I was still like, it's as if, I'm being left behind. And it was quite scary. The way when people are just Jakpa, this guy just saw I went to the plane, I went to the airport, I just saw him, fly away, So, but that restlessness made me to start asking questions. And it was in asking those questions that one day I met a man. I went to see my sister. And somebody had led them to join this Arthur Anderson, an engineer. So they said they were recruiting non-accountants to train them to be business professionals. I said, would they recruit a doctor? They said, we can find out. And we called them. They said I should come. And like they said, the rest is history.
That's true.
So why I'm telling this story is that so my own lot wasn't to live with him. But even though it triggered my own restlessness to find my own choice, but it was here.
But if the country doesn't allow you to pull out the resources you have inside of your talent or your skill, do you advise anybody to ship it out?
Well, let's examine that question more closely. Because you've made a statement that everything we've been talking about challenges, right? You've said if the country does not allow you. the country can't stop you from developing yourself in terms of some of these things we've talked about, right? So you need to do that anyway, whether you're going to ship out or you're going to stay here. I believe that there's a saying, I'm sure you've heard it before. It says life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you respond. 90%. So it means that you must pass the test of life, but 90% you control it. Right? So it's very important that and that's why we're having interviews like this. You call it the entrepreneurial spirit at the beginning. The entrepreneurial spirit is never say die. The entrepreneurial spirit is like there must be a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. I told you what the Harvard Business School said, that an entrepreneur is somebody who is able to get to destination regardless of the resources currently controlled. You know what I mean? He's trying to build $1 billion company. He probably doesn't have $1 in his pocket, and yet he knows he's going to get there. It may take time. Time has to be his friend. He can't do it in a hurry, but he will get there.
Yes.
That destination is not negotiable. So we need to say that. Now, when you do that, you find that if you are going to ship out, it should be part of that plan. In my own case, remember I eventually left to go to business school, but it was part of the plan to be a finance expert. And I did not leave until I got into that school where they train people to do what God has called me to do. If I had left earlier, I would have missed my way. Can you imagine if I had left earlier trying to be a doctor, then I went to Harvard Business School, they would have bounced me. They would have said, nothing doing. You are not serious.
Yes.
But I was busy training as an accountant, which I qualified in one prizes in, so I put in my best, proved that I could do business, not just medicine. And it was those set of credentials that Harvard Business School examined and said, come, we need you. Come and join this class.
That's true.
So you must bring something to the party. Invest in yourself is incredibly important.
Now, what do you think are is a problem or the problems of Africa in general? What do you think? What can you list at the
I think at the macro, at the big level, we have a problem of leadership, right? Because like Chino Achebe will tell you, the problem of Nigeria, which is a microcosm or a small version of Africa, is leadership, right? But that leadership is at every level. So if you look at the family that is floundering, there's a leadership problem with the parents. If you look at a church that is not reaching its potential, there's a leadership problem with the pastors and the leadership. If you look at the country, there's a leadership problem. So I'm a student of leadership, right? Because I believe in what I call the promise of leadership. When leadership is effective, it makes a difference in outcomes. Always. Every time leadership is effective. That's why it's good to be a leader in any situation. Even in this meeting. I don't know if you notice I'm trying to lead. If you ask questions, I lead it where I think it should be going. Because you've told me what our objectives are. So I can't afford to have this interview derail. Not because I know where we're going. Entrepreneurs. So when you ask me about Jakpa, what if the country doesn't support you? I say, no, you've missed it. Benzik. Right? Because entrepreneurs will not look at it that way. They will say, 90% depends on me. So they'll start training themselves so that when they apply for that thing abroad, they're going there, to something that would add major value to them. And they'll come back to this country as leaders. Yes.
Wow, interesting. So that means generally it has to start from the individual.
Oh, yes.
Before we talk about leadership.
Yes.
No,
it's both. So you start with self-leadership. Leadership is also in degrees. You have to lead yourself before you lead others. So you begin with leadership, but leadership of self, which means that you gain control over your emotions, your feelings. You know what I mean? If you are as spiritual as some of us are who are in the Christian faith, you bring the Holy Spirit and your own spirit to dominate your mind and your body. Right? Okay. So when you get up in the morning, you pray and you do the things you need to do, you exercise, you eat right. Those things are all self-leadership. You don't get angry anyhow. Okay. Bible says that anger rests in the bosom of fools. Right? So that's self-leadership, self-control. I teach a course in Bible school and all that called self-leadership. And it's really about the importance of victory over self. Okay. The Apostle Paul writes about it in 1 Corinthians 9, 24-27. He says, I keep under my body. I discipline my flesh. You know what I mean? So that discipline is important. Self-discipline is self-leadership. Now,
what if you find yourself in this quagmire whereby you have disciplined yourself, but like the quote you said, 10% what's happened out there, 90% how you respond to it. But you've disciplined yourself and everything within you, but the forces that is coming out there doesn't permit you to do that which you need to do or to effect a change that you really need to effect due to the cause of
life is a mindset.
Yes.
I put it to you, Benzik, that you must challenge this mindset. There's a book Pastor John talks about, growth mindset. Yes. And it deals with how people, whether people are sort of like reactive or what you might call passive. Life throws things at me. Or whether their mindset, remember I dealing with the attitude before we get into the reality, and I'll come to your reality question. Whether you believe that things happen to you just like that and you can't do anything about it, or whether you actually believe deep down that my choices matter, right? And that things will get better because of my choices. It's very important. And if you take nothing else away from this interview, for the listeners, that you believe fundamentally as an article of faith, as a dimension of your faith, that what I do matters, and good things will happen to me because of the investment I'm going to make in myself, the right things I'm going to do. Let's go through the points you asked me before about success.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I spoke to you about godliness.
Yes.
Godliness is real. The Bible says, Hebrews 11:6, it says, without faith it is impossible to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. In other words, you have to believe that God is real. There are many people who don't believe that. In other words, as a matter of, they just think, no, this thing is not for real. If it's one of those, then obviously, and you know that once you believe that, the same Bible says all things work together for good to them who love God, who are called according to his purpose. If you believe that good things will happen to you, life is self-fulfilling. A lot of life is self-fulfilling, right? Then I talked about the importance of training, investing in yourself, right? If you're making that investment, it will bear fruit. It will. I talked about the importance of people. You know what I mean? The kind of people that you are getting, and these are all things that are within your control. Not all of them. You choose to fear God. You choose to develop yourself. You choose the kind of people you work with. And even when you start getting into some of the other things I talked about at the end, you find that like time, your time is yours. You know what I mean? So what am I saying? I do believe that these things are important, but they're important in the context of time. The first hand you're dealt may not be a good hand, honestly. That's why I said, please, the Bible even says, finishing is better than starting. Some people have been dealt a bad hand. Not maybe you may not even have parents, or you are born into a place where there is no money. You don't understand. All those are hands that have been dealt, but you start the journey from there.
Okay. Now, why does a business experience plateau or get stuck at a stage, and how can one overcome that stage?
The way they said that somebody said the definition of madness is that if you keep doing the same thing and expect the same different result, then it's not. Do you understand? So if you find that your business has stagnated, then it means that something has to give, right? I talked about leadership. It could be leadership. You know what I mean? At times you have to be bold enough to say, if I can't do it, let me bring somebody else. People have been known to alter, particularly if you are the decision maker. There are times, look at Capital Alliance. Yes. When I had to go into government, I had to hand over to a more experienced person, right? Now I've come back, I'm chairman, and I'm working with people who I hope are smarter than me, right? So you need to change the variable. At times you might need to the variables need to change. You can't keep doing the same thing. Particularly, the mistake you don't want to make is just to assume that you get luckier sometimes. Yes, it's good to have staying power, but also it should be important to, look at the variables. In other words, look at the people in the business. Maybe you might need to make some management changes. Look at whether you need to, change the strategy. Strategy means the business formula you're using to get from here to there. You know what I mean? Maybe you're on the wrong road and you need to redirect, right? The way a navigator might tell you. It's also possible that you need capital. I don't want to play down capital, and that you need to bring in capital partners, but bring in capital that will add value. Capital that will be collaborative, capital that will partner with you, not fight with you, capital that would have a handshake, yes, which is what we do in Capital Alliance.
Okay, so then when a business is gotten to that stage and capital is a problem, then the entrepreneur needs to look out for investment or look out for.
Well, if it turns out that capital, you made a point. If capital is a problem, and it can be the problem, there's a time when you need to invest in a business for it to get his life back. Yes.
So how can an entrepreneur go about that movement to partner with a Capital Alliance company like this?
You talked about it. They probably will need a business plan if it's an existing business to outline the case, the investment case, and then they might get an advisor. The quality of advice you get is important. I always tell people get good advisors, and then they will approach the people, and if there's a fit, they'll give them. They'll marry or they'll partner. Yes.
Okay. Now, when it comes to business, succeeding in business, do you think it's easier to succeed in business in this part of the world, in Africa or in Nigeria, than in the Western world?
Things are tougher here because the infrastructure here is difficult. But it also means that the entrepreneurs here who succeed should be given more respect because they battle the odds to succeed. But remember, the competition is more over there.
Yes.
Right? So you can't eat your cake and have it. There's more competition over there. There's actually less competition here to some degree. If you're very good at something.
Over there than here.
Oh yes. Oh, like what I do there, thousands of people do it. But here I'm a pioneer. Exactly. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is a king. Right? Yeah. But it's tougher to do it here. So what I have to do is to then be more strategic, more calculating in the bets I'm making here to make sure I succeed. And I have to have what I call a margin of safety. That is the ability to withstand the shocks. Because society will throw some shocks at you. Look at the foreign exchange thing. If I'm investing dollars, I need to think about how to make sure I get dollars back. And it's not easy. Always easy, yes.
Now, as a one-eyed man in this game that you talked about now, what has been your experience like in pioneering the first private equity firm in this country?
It's been a good run. We've been doing it for 25 years. And I would say God has helped us. When we started, we had General Abacha as the president or the head of state. Then democracy came, and that opened things up, and we invested successfully. You know, we've had some rough patches, but like I said, staying power is a hallmark of success, but we've had staying power.
Why is it only you guys in the game? Is it that other?
We're not the only ones in the game. The other players.
The other players.
Yes.
They are also.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. How important is strong team in management?
It's important, but remember that team has to be fit for purpose. But it's very important to have the right team. Get the things you can control right. That's the first principle. Okay. The things you can control include the team. Make sure your team is the right team. If you need to make changes, make the changes. It might even include yourself, right? Secondly, make sure that you put your best foot forward. Get the right advice. You know, even the way you package the story is very important. You know, the more you can demonstrate a link between the past and the future, the better. In other words, what you're saying to do is not all completely theory. You know what I mean? What you've done in the past, you know, should indicate or demonstrate that you can actually go on this journey, right? And that's what we call track record, right? And then it helps a lot, you know, to basically also get people who share a similar, you know, who are similar to you. Maybe they're interested in the same industry you are in, you know, because capital is specialized too. Some people specialize in Africa like ourselves. Some people specialize in Asia. You know, so you look in the right place. You know what I mean? So you pre-qualify even where you're going, so you don't get too many negative answers. A lot of people don't do any pre-qualification. They just go almost like blindly. You ask A, you ask B. No, do your research, do your homework. Who is most likely to invest and why? Who is investing in your sector? Who has money now to invest? Some people don't have money, but you know, you haven't done your research, you don't know. You know, and so on and so forth. And I think if you do all that, God willing, you will succeed.
Okay. Now, are there misconceptions that entrepreneurs have when it comes to seeking investments?
Well, we've covered a lot of them today. Okay. You know, so one of the most important misconceptions, like I said, is that like capital alone will solve all problems, right? It's important to know that capital works best when the environment is fertile for capital, when the environment is ripe for capital, meaning the entrepreneur knows what he's doing. Once you put money there, the money starts to grow. You know what I mean? It's like somebody who's trying to. Capital is like the seed you're planting, but you've watered the ground, you've put the fertilizer in, so that once you put the seed will germinate and grow. If not, the seed will die. Then you go for more seed.
Okay. Now, if you're looking at a company before you can invest, how do you evaluate the potential of a business growth for you to know that this business is going to be successful or is going to fail along the line?
So, like we said, first of all, the attitude varies from stage to stage. For early stage investors, they know that not all the businesses succeed. The rule of thumb is that like out of every 10 maybe startups or early stage businesses, maybe 1 or 2 will succeed. The others will either fail or flounder or plateau or whatever, right? But that's why they spread their investment. Nobody just does one thing. They will take 10 of them, they will give it to $100,000 or 10 million naira, and or whatever amount that they want to seed them with. And then, but as the businesses get to the stage where we invest, we actually look at the track record. Because when a business has track record, has a strong management team, is in an attractive sector, the industry where it is in, it's an attractive and it's in a leadership position, that's the probability will keep doing well if you give it capital is very high. So depending on the stage, at our stage, the things that you can use to signal success, tend to come out very clearly. And therefore, we can be very selective in picking the ones that we think will be winners and backing them. But remember that you start at the beginning where you back quite a number of players, knowing that some of them may not succeed, but these are ideas that should be backed.
So when you back a number of them, how do you, apart from the financial investment, what other ways do you help to ensure that the business succeed?
Excellent question. So remember, that's what venture capitalists do. So those venture capitalists always include, that's why they invest in sectors or industries they understand. They always include people who have grown up in those industries, who are operators, mentors, people like senior people who have worked there, so that you give these entrepreneurs mentors, right? And you sit on the board with them, right? You sit on their board, you introduce them to markets, in terms of customers, you introduce them to other sources of capital apart from yourself. Those people rarely go in alone. If you're a venture capitalist, you want to invest as a club of investors because you bring different things. So together, you guys can show up the business and help it succeed.
Interesting. Yes. Now, as we use round up now, how do you create enabling environment for businesses to prosper and also trade and investment? How do you create that enabling?
So, like I said, that was my priority when I was in government.
Yes.
And I believe that government has a particularly important role in that. And it has to do with what we call both hard and soft infrastructure. Hard infrastructure means that, like, power, businesses need power, they need good transportation, they need, if it's an industry, they need all the things inside the fence of the industry that you need to succeed. But I'll say power, and transportation and logistics, and then they also need soft infrastructure. Soft infrastructure is the right sort of rules and policies. Okay. It should be easy, to get approvals. Mm-hmm. You're trying to do a business and you need an approval and it takes years. That's frustrating. Yes. It should be easy, for those businesses to attract capital from elsewhere because you're friendly to investors. So when foreign investors are coming, they normally want tax breaks. They normally want to be sure their capital is protected. They normally want to be sure that the property rights, what we call property rights, which means that, like, if I give you money and we sign an agreement, I have a right, and I can enforce that right. Yes. It's not like you say the paper, I can tear it, it doesn't mean anything. Those are called property rights. All those things are broadly what we call enabling environment. And I would say even the stance of government, a friendly stance instead of a hostile one, even the speech or the pronouncements, what we say. So for instance, people would tell you when I was there, I signaled that I was a friend and an enabler to business, to investors, to industry, to trade. Even that alone, is very powerful because people look at the body language of government to say, are they going to support me? Is it that, like, they want to kill the investment? That's why whoever is coming and whatever we're doing, even in this transition we're in, we must create this enabling environment for the economy, because if the economy does well, you create jobs. Yes. And you will help entrepreneurs to succeed as well.
And to help people to pay their taxes.
And it will help people to pay their taxes. So it's a win-win, it's a virtuous cycle, and that's what we want to focus on.
Environments are not created, like you talk about power and good roads. If power and good roads and all of that, we are looking at it, then if entrepreneurs are doing their own parts and the government is not fulfilling their own part of it, do you encourage the entrepreneurs to keep on paying their taxes?
Well, the thing about a virtuous cycle is that, like, everybody has to be committed to success. And the opposite of a virtuous cycle is a vicious cycle, which is where, because you're not doing your part, I'm not doing my part, because I'm not doing my part, you're not doing your part. So we need to decide, and somebody has to have the courage to say, right, I'll be part of the solution. So I certainly encourage entrepreneurs to pay taxes. Why? Because when they pay taxes, they're more interested in government. People who don't pay taxes don't care how government is because they feel they have nothing at stake. But the moment you go and look at societies where they pay their taxes, they demand services. Even what we're seeing in Nigeria, where there is more activism and more demand on government, is partly because people are beginning to pay taxes and also have an interest and investment in society. So that's not negotiable. We need to do that. But government also needs to be responsive, because as people are paying taxes, they expect to get something in return. They expect services. They expect that social contract, as we call it, to be honored. And the demand in a democracy is that we should be fielding candidates who will honor the social contract, not the ones that will not. And if they don't do it, you deselect them. In other words, you vote them out and vote in those that will do it. I know it's easier said than done, but I think we're on the journey already.
You think we're on the journey?
Well, I think we're on the journey, honestly. I mean, you can see that, like, there have been some changes. We're not quite where we want to be, but we're not where we used to be. Remember I told you I had General Abacha when I was coming, and General Abacha was going to be the sort of consensus candidate, didn't even want any other candidate to emerge. Where we are now is better. It's not where we want to be, but it's certainly better. And I think things will get better, God willing.
What are your final words?
My most important word is, wisdom. Okay. Wisdom is a principal thing. So for the entrepreneur, try and invest in yourself. If you invest in yourself, others will invest in you. You can take that to the bank. Yes.
You invest in yourself.
Others will invest in you.
Will invest in you.
Yes.
Thank you very much
for
this opportunity.
Thank you
very much, sir. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. So, guys, thank you very much. Thank our guest here, Mr. Okechukwu Enelamah, for this inspiring interview and for this inspiring session. So, it's your first time of coming to the channel. Do well to hit the subscribe button. Share this video with one or two persons that this video is going to be effective for. And also, don't forget to like this video and hit the post notification so that each time I upload a new video, you are one of the first to get notified. So my name is Benzik, and I'm going to see you again next time. Cheers.